I met Pam for the first time in Spain. I'd met a writer called Paul Sand, and he said, come over. I've got a friend in Spain. I was terrified. I was going to meet a playwright. I met Keith as well. Keith greeted us. They had an annex. He said, look, the fridge is full, anything you like. I'd never met people like this. I spoke to Pam briefly amongst all her books, and we spoke briefly, and then that was, it's clear that no more small talk was needed. And that was very much the ethos that you are who you are with Pam. And I'd never been in a household like it. Every tense word was so long I couldn't understand it. And I adored her. Pam's not as famous as she should be because she was quite reclusive and she didn't play the game very well. She was also a woman. She was also, although she was university trained, not part of the gang. And she had a sixth sense for saying the wrong thing in public. She was who she was. And so Pam was picked up very early. Her mum was in service in the West, not the West Country, in New Forest. And she had a thick burr of an accent, the original Pam. I've met her family, but she reinvented herself as this erudite, learned person, because she was picked up by a school teacher who went back to her mum and said, your daughter is extraordinarily bright. So Pam was a contradiction as an adult because she was this peasant woman at heart with a foul mouth on her and a really irreverent sense of humour and a rebel. But she was also a huge mind and an academic. I sat with her on a sofa, very like this sofa, with these cushions which Pam made. And she said, it was later in life, and she said, she was grumbling that she was underdone and her work, why couldn't she get her work on like other people? And I said, darling, the great thing is because you've been not spoon-fed, because it's difficult. You're still angry, you've still got a lot to say. And that's the most precious thing for a playwright in their later years. She still had a lot to say. So I suppose she's a diamond yet to be discovered. She had it in her brain that I should play Passionaria, which for me was, I was nobody. And it was just extraordinary that anybody should believe in you that much. And she even rewrote it because I was very young at the time. I think I was only about 26. And I took La Passionaria up to 40. But beyond that wouldn't have been credible. So she kind of, she was determined. She would fight for what she wanted. And so I went over to this place in Spain of hers, and then I had a Get By in Spanish book, and I took a train up to Oviedo and went all along the mining coast in search of La Passionaria. And where was I? I was in Skye somewhere, and I met somebody. It was just really random and bizarre. And I said I wanted to find out more about Dolores Ibarruri, the late Dolores Ibarruri, because Pam had told me she was dead. And he said, what do you mean the late Dolores Ibarruri? She's a friend of mine and she lives in Madrid. I went, oh my God. He said, would you like to meet her? And I went, yes. So I went and hung out in Madrid for several days. In fact, she was not particularly well. And I waited about 4 days and then I got cold feet. I thought, no, I'll work from the video. I'm too terrified because if you meet the real person, that's a huge responsibility. So I worked from the footage that there was of the extraordinary and exquisite woman that was Dolores Ibarruri. And then she sent us a video as we opened in Newcastle. She became the leader of the Communist Party after a very, very poor start as a miner's daughter. And she sent a video of solidarity with the miners in England. They were on strike at that time. And the whole cast was like, we felt blessed. I suppose Pam was a radical and a feminist. But she didn't sit nicely in the feminist slot. Everybody thought Pam was younger than she was. Everyone thought she was the same age as Carol Churchill. And there were so few photographs of Pam. But in fact, Pam started to write later in life. Pam's view of politics was based very much on a heart understanding of the world, which she saw because she had had 4 children before she started to write. Of course she wrote. There's a very early radio play. But it was only later in life that she really dedicated herself after the children to, I will write. I will write above everything else. And I think that affected her politics. So she was left-wing, without a doubt. But it did change because she didn't belong to any party. She was a thinker. And so under certain circumstances, you can't just follow one party. You have to be at odds with your party. She also, above everything, I think it was, she felt that women were not represented as they should be. And so she wrote huge parts for women. She was criticised for doing biopics. And the irony is that she did Piaf as a potboiler, because if you do a play about somebody famous, it has a better shout of going on. Pam's Heartland was in the plays, perhaps the lesser known plays, which come from the heart and from her experience. The thing that we had in common was we'd studied psychology. So I think that a lot, she really connected with her writing, with her characters. And if you stood behind her and she didn't know you were there, she would say all the lines out loud. And I always said, playing Pam's plays, it's not what your character says, it's what your character doesn't say that tells you what they're thinking. I remember her telling me once, though, she was very serious about her writing. She savoured every line in her mouth as she said it. And she said she also saw the sentences. She kind of felt them, and it was her great joy to hone them so that they were sayable and said perfectly what she wanted to express. And I think you can feel that in the line. It's very hard to get on in this world without a niche. So if you like, feminism was the nearest to her niche, but even having found a niche, she'd kick against it because she wanted to rethink everything. She was terribly in love with Stanley and Garibaldi as well. So they didn't have to be women. It would have limited her just to pioneer women. She spent a lot of time and energy doing that and providing great women roles. Dizzy Fish, Stas and Fire, I think, is an extraordinary play. But why would she limit herself to that, seeing as men have been dominant for so long? Why not tackle them? She had plenty to say. Pam was just a bundle of contradictions. And I think I took a very bright young director who wanted to work with her, Hannah Chiswick, to see her in her later life. And she said that Pam created a kind of bohemia at home in which everybody was welcome. Nobody was an outcast. And all you had to do was be true to yourself, which is terribly confusing because everywhere is full of invisible rules, social rules. Pam didn't survive in an environment where you had to pretend. And so I suppose as she got older, she became more reclusive. She was very powerful in a room, but I don't think she knew that. She was incredibly inspirational to all of us, but probably very insecure. I don't know. So she created this environment, and you will see that theme in her plays as well. A sanctuary, if you like, where everybody's welcome. And I think that's what she wanted to create, and that's where she wanted to live.